Welcome to Leadership Lessons from the Fastlane, brought to you by the Washington Speakers Bureau. In this space, we will explore some of the most pressing challenges that leaders face today with the world's most respected, innovative, curious, and accomplished thought leaders. We'd like to welcome our host, best-selling author and co-author of the recently published book, Choose Love, Not Fear, a WSB exclusive speaker for almost 30 years, Gary Heil.
This is Leadership Lessons from the Fast Lane. I'm Gary Heil. Today, I'm honored and excited to have two extraordinary guests with us. They're going to help us examine the role of leadership humility in building extraordinary teams. Today with us, Dr. Marilyn Gist. Marilyn literally wrote the book about leadership humility that I've been reading for the last couple of weeks. Great book, Marilyn. I really enjoyed it. Marilyn was a professor emerita of Seattle University. She was formerly the dean of the Albert School of Business and Economics. She was the executive director of the Center for Leadership Formation, and she was instrumental in helping Seattle University build an executive MBA program that rose to number 11 in the nation. And also with us is a guy who needs no introduction, the true American icon. Alan Mulally was this CEO and president of Boeing Commercial Aircraft, where he worked on every aircraft from the 707 to the 777. And Alan, you and I may be the only ones that remember the 707. He was also the CEO of one of the most historic transformations in American history at Ford Motor Company. Alan has been ranked number 3 among the world's 50 greatest leaders by Fortune. And Time has called him one of the 50 most influential people in the world. Alan, Marilyn, it's great to see you both again.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
You know, Marilyn, as I read your book over the last couple of weeks, besides every time I read a chapter, I'm going, yes. And then I'm agreeing with almost everything. Actually, I can't think of anything I don't agree with in it. I also noticed something else. There was a little voice in the back of my head, and it was Alan Mulally yelling, "Love them up before you coach them up." And your definition, Marilyn, of leadership humility being to feel and display deep regard for others' dignity, and Alan's calling about loving them up and being respectful. He seems to have adopted sort of Thomas Aquinas's view of love, which is meaning good and caring about everybody. I kept getting this feeling in every chapter that really the essence of it for me became, if we believed in and respected and cared about people, we would be far more effective leaders. Did I miss it, or did I get this understanding of what I was supposed to read in the book?
No, I would say that is one of the main points, is simply understanding human dignity and getting back to the roots of everybody has value. Everyone has value. And if we degrade that or denigrate that, we lose their motivation. We lose their creativity. We lose their interest in even doing a great job for us. So as leaders, that becomes foundational, how we support the dignity of others in every interaction we have.
And Alan, did I get that about right from your point of view?
Well, absolutely. And I think that was a really, really special summary by Marilyn, because you think of that everything that's going to be done is going to be about people working together. And not only do you want to put together talented organizations, but also safe organizations and highly motivated organizations where people are delivering their very best for everybody, including the ability to work together. And humility is probably the essence of working together.
And was it your shared belief in the power of people and really the dignity of people and treating them that way that brought you two together? I noticed that not only is Alan on the book, but you guys teach a class together, and it seems to me you're pretty simpatico about this.
So I would step in here, Gary, and say that's been the result of us working together for what, Alan, 7-8 years now. We actually were connected by one of the alumni from our executive program. He had previously worked for Alan, so he knew Alan's working together system. He knew Alan personally, and he had been through the program that I had run. And so he's the one who saw the connection. And after Alan stepped down from Ford, the man's name was Peter Morton, and he kept saying, you know, you two need to meet each other. You need to meet each other. And I'm going, oh yeah, right, I'm busy, you know. And finally he said, I want to set up a meeting with Alan and you. And he brought him into the office, and it was really a great couple of hours. I was impressed that Alan spent that much time. I had figured 20 minutes in and out, you know, world-renowned CEO. But we did connect. And one of the funny things, Gary, was, you know, Alan was talking about what he had accomplished. He was just several months past having left Ford. So he still had that glow of the big turnaround and American icon. And he said, you know, I don't quite know what it is about me that's let me do all of this. I mean, you know, people kind of talk about what I've done, and you know, there were a lot of results, but you know, it's my working together system. Is it about who I am? I mean, I don't really understand entirely, but I know some of the mechanics. And it took me about 15 minutes with the guy to know that who he is was about half of it. And I said that to him. I said, Alan, I think about half of it is who you are as a person. And he kind of looked at me like, I don't know what planet you're from. I don't know what that's about. And it took me about another 6 years to convince him that who you are as a leader is critically important, and that he happens to have a lot of the right stuff just by nature. So I've been busy trying to tease out what those components are, both from Alan and several other leaders I've worked with.
Yeah, and you know, that's the first question. You know, I noticed in the book as I'm reading it, I one of the parts where I was jumping up and down in total violent agreement was you said that implicitly every time we meet a leader that goes, follow me, we ask a couple questions. Whether we articulate them or not, it's a different story. But we're asking, like, who are you really, right?
Right.
Where are we going? And you know, can you see me? Am I really somebody that's worthy of your respect? Those are kind of things we ask every time a leader implies follow me. Is that
absolutely? We're all wondering about those things as we make a decision whether to follow, and how much of ourselves we want to invest in following that person. And so, you know, getting back to the story about Alan, he has so much respect for other people's dignity, so much inherent kindness, as I've come to know him all these years. And people pick up on that immediately. They know that he's genuine, he's real, he's kind, he sees them, and that, you know, you can trust what he says. So the whole character piece is very, very solid with him. And that's part of what encourages people to want to follow. The structure of his working together system is also incredible, and it makes a huge difference. But if you put that same structure in the hands of somebody who's a jerk, you're going to get very different results.
Yeah, so that leads me to a question, right? We spend about $16 billion a year trying to develop better leaders in North America. And if you look at the results haven't been great in doing this. And for years, people have been preaching the gospel of we've got to think about people differently and be more respectful of their dignity. But you note in your book, Marilyn, that it's still rare. How 70 years after McGregor was preaching the gospel at MIT, is it still rare to do something as common sense as treat people with respect?
Oh gosh, Gary, I think that there's several factors in that, and I concur with you. My own experience is that about 15% of leaders get it naturally. I think there's probably about 15% who will never get it, no matter how much training and development you give them or coaching. But I think there's a vast gray area of about maybe 70% of folks who simply don't understand. One of the reasons that we don't see it is that we focus so heavily on results And many leaders are not only super busy, but they feel the pressure of, I've got to deliver the results, I've got to meet our goals for the quarter, for the month, whatever. And they're putting all of their mental energy into bringing that about. And the more sort of interpersonal dynamics with the people on their team, or how the team is working together, that gets short shrift. So that's part of it. Another part of it is that leaders tend to be pretty dynamic, externally focused people. The flip side of that means they don't always do a lot of self-reflection. And it takes a great deal of self-awareness and self-management to really pull off something well, such as Alan's expected behaviors in his working together system. You have to really reflect on yourself. And, you know, I'll own it that when I was a young leader many years ago, I didn't get it either. I had a chance to work with an employee whose performance wasn't going well. And in that review, I was trying desperately to get to results. And in talking with her, trying to explain what I was looking for better, she being super, super defensive. And in my frustration, I finally just looked at her and said, look, you know, on a scale of 1 to 10, you're about a 1. And then I watched her face just blanch. I mean, okay, so maybe I'm in my late 20s at this point, but I'll never forget the look on her face after I said that. And then I had to live with the aftermath. She was very cautious around me, but it didn't exactly improve her motivation or the results. Months later, after I left, the person she reported to started describing what a rock star she was and how great her performance was and how much initiative. And I'm going, what did he see that I didn't see? What's different? So that kind of began my journey that ultimately led me to this thing about human dignity and the nature of the interaction. But I still see so many leaders today who focus on the results and just leave dead bodies in the hallway, just like I did. Doesn't work.
Wow. I think we've all been there a little bit. You know, Alan, one of the things that occurs to me in the conversations we've had in the past is that I would agree with Marilyn. You're naturally so gregarious and care about people comes across. But yet you, throughout your career, I believe, constantly ask for feedback about the way you led and ways you could get better using coaches like Marshall and others. Am I wrong about that, Alan, or is that true?
No, it's absolutely right, Gary. And it's almost part of the system and the process that Marilyn was described that we've used over the years. And a little bit more information about that. When you think of all the airplane programs that you described, every one of them is an invention, and they're incredible. I mean, an average commercial airplane has around 4 million parts, flies halfway around the world, safe and efficient transportation. And when you're working on developing a new airplane, you can have 500 to 600,000 people that are working on it around the world. And so Marilyn's point about a system, a reliable system on how you work together, and especially the expected behaviors that go with that. And of course, at the top of those expected behaviors is respect for others, and also the humility of the leader and the leadership team, because you have to expect the unexpected and expect to deal with it because it's an invention. And so having that open mind, seeking to understand before you seek to be understood, is really, really important. And of course, loving them up is essential, because they're committing their life to creating these phenomenal things, and these results are bigger than all of us together. So it really, and you think about the business plan review part of it, which we'll probably talk about a little bit later, is that every week, every member of the team is describing their contribution to the plan, what the status of the plan is, including is it on plan? Does it have an issue? Do we have an answer for it, or an issue we don't have an answer for it? So the feedback is built in, just built in every week, every quarter, every year. And so, and also every member of the team has a personal further development plan, both on their technical skills and competencies, but also on their behaviors and their working together skills. And they're shared with every member of the team. So you have the entire team giving you feedback. in a positive way on how you can improve your effectiveness, but also the effectiveness of the team and including all of the stakeholders that are participating.
See,
You know
Alan,
what?
if I had had that system all those years ago, I wouldn't have needed to tell that employee that. The whole team would have told her.
Well, you know, what's really interesting is, Marilyn, you and I probably have a similar experience like this. You know, we talk about what we think theoretically or what we've learned or what we've researched, and somebody will always raise their hand and go, yeah, okay, but how do you do it? One of the great things about having the practitioner with the professor is that the system, the working together system, Alan, that you used at Ford and Boeing, is the practical application of a half a century of research about how do we really include others and work together. One particular part of it, before we get to the details of it, I think is worthy of our discussion, and that is leadership is in a lot of things. It's a reflection of who we are. It's a lot of things, but I don't know how we get better at something without feedback. Does it still amaze both of you how few leaders ask for feedback, even though it's available all the time from people? It still amazes me how many people think they're going to improve with no feedback on their present performance. Are you with me there, or I missed it?
Well, I'd like to go first to share how neat Marilyn is over and over again. So you think about this book and you think about this thought about humility, and there's the answer to your question. Because most people, as they're going, and still today, as they go through their careers and they're asked to assume more and more responsibility, they keep thinking it's about what they've done, and the way they have done it is the key to success. Well, as you grow up in any organization, profit or nonprofit, you're going to end up evolving to facilitating and coaching, as opposed to being the smartest person in the room that tells everybody what to do. Because you know, as you pointed out, we've been working on this transition to the knowledge worker and Peter Drucker's concept for a long time, but we still have most of the leaders have this arrogance about them. And also, as Marilyn said, that's why they think they were promoted, so they need to keep doing the same thing. So the most important thing is the humility. It's the essence of all of it. Because if you're arrogant, or you have this perception of yourself and what your service is, and that's different than facilitating an environment and nurturing an environment where everybody's asking the questions and everybody's is providing the feedback, so you move forward together with confidence.
I would add to that leaders need to be aware that as they rise in an organization, or whatever context they're in, they gain power. And the more power they have, the more reluctant other people are going to be to give you feedback. And if you have any kind of defensiveness or any kind of arrogance that goes along with how you interact with people, you can bet they're going to shut down. They don't want to bring the bad news to you. They don't want to tell you that your interaction with them in particular is creating a problem. So when you look at this issue of getting feedback, I think we not only need to ask for it and be open to it, but we need to be aware that the higher we go, the fewer truth tellers there will be. And you almost have to put systems in place like Alan did in order to get the information both on your own performance and how the organization's doing.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about the working together system, because I think a lot of this translation that's brilliant to me is I read Marilyn's book and I want to become more people-centric. I want to become more aware of the dignity of other human beings in this. A practical application of how do I do it? How do I have a stakeholder-centric, inclusive process is on everyone's mind. And I first heard of this working together system years ago, and I wish I'd have met you probably I won't say how long ago, Alan, but a long time ago.
We're maturing nicely.
No, well, I can still remember when Lincoln was president. But the idea that there is a practical way of doing that that goes to answering, I think, Marilyn, your three questions, doesn't it? I mean, it goes to who I am a little bit, but then a lot about where are we going and how are we going to work together to make that happen. Would you agree with me, Marilyn, that the process sort of answers those questions if you do it like Alan's talking about?
Absolutely. It's embedded in his process, and that's why I reached out to him for a description of his process in the book. Yeah.
So Alan, can you lead us through that and tell us, if I'm sitting there and I'm a young person and I want to adopt this, can you give me a couple pieces of advice about how I would adopt the system?
Oh, sure. And also, just to reiterate what Marilyn said, it was a real honor to be asked by Marilyn to participate in her book. Of course, the humility was at the top of my list forever, because it's absolutely required to be able to provide the service over the years of whether it's Boeing or Ford or whatever. And so it was an honor to be asked to participate, and she got really specific really fast. And so and it was really fun, because if you read her book, one of the neatest things about her book, I mean, everybody's got to read it. It's the best book ever. And she actually puts a drawing in there with boxes. And as an engineer, I mean, I couldn't get enough of helping her move in that direction with enthusiasm. And because it was like a diagram where you could understand it. And so that was great. And also she said, okay, now I'd like you to write the foreword to the book. And I said, oh, okay. And then on top of that, I would like you to write a chapter that describes your working together management system. And I said, okay. And the neat thing was that as we worked on that together, that the humility part just kept going higher and higher in the importance of what makes this work. And so we had so much fun doing that. So I think it's chapter 7, wasn't it? Isn't it? Yeah, it's chapter 7. And so, so the essence of your question is that if you think of program management or project management, and just use the airplane again, the same thing for a car, same thing for a business, is the most important thing is you come together around a compelling vision for what you're about together, and also a comprehensive strategy for achieving that vision, and then a really clear, relentless implementation plan. Now you can see right away, Marilyn's point, that starts with the leader and the leadership team. Because if the leader doesn't understand that that is their unique responsibility, then it won't make any difference what you've read or what you're doing. And so, because everybody wants to know not only who you are, which is really important, I mean, really important, they also want to know, where are we going? What am I committing my life to? And then the other one they want to know is, do you see me? And that's bigger than, do you just see me? Are you creating a culture that is going to nurture an environment that's both smart and it's safe and it's healthy? And I feel safe and healthy to be able to share everything about my contribution, including when there are issues, which are now gems, not red items. And it's not I'm not the problem, but the issue is a problem. And then we can work together because it's safe to be able to share. Because if you don't, if it's not safe, or somebody making fun of each other and stuff, then people are going to back off of being their authentic selves, because they're real people and they're trying to get by and they're trying to have a life and have a job and stuff. So creating that environment is really, really important. So the most important thing then is, one, come together around the vision. And you can imagine every airplane had a vision. There's short range, long range, polar routes, point to point, nonstop. Also, the real vision is to get people together safely and efficiently around the world. Because we all know, it was so compelling, which is one of the reasons I joined Boeing, is that if you get people together around the world, you find out we have more in common than we're different. And now we can choose to work together for the greater good for all of us. And so then the strategy is not just a technical strategy or a business strategy. It's what we do, it's why we do it, and it's how we do it. It's everything about the culture, everything about the partnerships, everything about including all the stakeholders, and also the strategy of working together. What are the meetings going to look like? And what are the behaviors going to be? What are we going to do when people choose not to follow these working together behaviors? And then, of course, the relentless implementation is what's gotten so much reviews around the world, is every Thursday we'd have a business plan review. Same way that in our house, Nikki and I have been married for 52 years. We have 5 children. We have a family plan review and a life plan review every Sunday too, because it works for everything. And so in that meeting, the entire leadership team is networked around the world. And I start out reviewing the vision, the strategy, and the plan, and what the status is. And then every member of the team, and including the expected behaviors, then every member of the team presents their part. So whether it's engineering, manufacturing, communications, legal, whatever. And then what the status is, and then what the areas are that need special attention. And then we follow that up with a meeting to deal with the special attention items. And so you can see that the process is really straightforward, is really reliable. No one ever misses a meeting. And also the behaviors in the meeting is there's zero tolerance for violating not only the process or the expected behaviors, or you get a chance to get to know me better. And
that's not always a good thing.
That's always a good thing. It's always a good thing because I am going to ask you if you're committed to these behaviors in this process. And if you're not committed to it, it's okay. I mean, it's okay. And so every once in a while, Marilyn loves this, that somebody will say, after I'm holding them accountable for following the working together process and the behaviors, I'll say it's okay. And they look at me and they go, I can see it on their face. Oh, I'm so important that my behaviors that are detracting from working together are going to be okay because I'm so important and needed. And I always turn around to them and I say very nicely, well, that's not really what I mean by okay. What I mean is that you are deciding that this doesn't work for you. And that is okay. And we wish you the best. Remember that first principle you brought up, Gary. We love you. You're a human being. And we wish you the very best. Now, if you want to stay and move in this direction, which I think 90% of the people will do this because you're going to move into the light, you're going to feel that satisfaction and meaningful accomplishment. And then we'll get you help. The team will help you. We'll get you a coach. Marshall's a great one. But we are absolutely committed to holding ourselves accountable and responsibility for creating and nurturing this working together environment.
It's so interesting to see a pragmatic application of something we've been talking about for more than a half a century in the press, and in a way that it brings inclusively. Because I think, if I'm right about this, Alan, your word is you don't, as the leader, own the process. That all stakeholders own the process, right? It's a totally inclusory thing. Am I right about that?
Oh, absolutely, and it's so important, Gary, because the second principle on working together is include everyone. And that means everyone, not only all of the employees, but all of the suppliers, all of the customers themselves, all the regulators around the world, the communities in which we operate. And so all those stakeholders are represented by a member of the leadership team every Thursday in that business plan review. And the reason is that it's all about people working together, and we need their hearts and minds. And the most respectful thing that you can do with everybody is share with them the vision, the strategy and plan, and what the status is. There are no secrets, whether it's financial, technical, whatever. And everybody goes, and then most leaders, to your point earlier, most leaders can't stand a writ. I mean, the first writ, it took me 2 months to get the first person to say they had a problem. Shut down production of a new product in Oakville, Canada, because the culture before was, if you brought a problem to your supervisor or your CEO and you didn't have an answer or solution to propose, then you seem to disappear. So back to where we are on this journey of moving to managing the knowledge workers that need to be together and work together and have a safe environment. So including everybody is really, really important.
Marilyn, doesn't this go right to your third question a lot? I found that third question to be so appropriate in the application of both Alan's system and in general. Do you see me is a really interesting articulation of it. Can you talk about that a little, Marilyn?
Sure. What Alan is saying is spot on. I think, to put it in the current context, Gary, where we are seeing, the great resignation and lots of employees looking to change jobs or move on, the "do you see me" question is the core of it. It's absolutely the core of it, of people feeling, in some ways, I have done an awful lot for you in the last couple of years of the pandemic. I pivoted, I figured out how to work from home. I lost my daycare. I had my kids in the next room. We needed extra computers to get everyone on Zoom on time. I had to move 5 feet from bed to office, whatever. And now, as I think of going back, I'm also a changed person. And are you, leadership, really thinking about what you're asking of me? Are you looking at the way in which maybe your mission or your strategies are not exactly the things that I want to be a part of anymore? Do you really understand who I am as a person? And are you interested in including me in some of the decisions that we make to resolve issues? And are you interested in developing me so that I can achieve my own potential? And if you're not, maybe coming back to the office isn't such a good deal for me. So good luck with that.
Well, yeah, it's been said that the Great Resignation really is the Great Reassessment, right? Where people are
It
looking
is.
at their employers and their bosses and their leaders, and they're going, what part should this play in my life? And are the sacrifices I'm making worth it? And I think leaders are just slow on the uptake to realize that people bring their whole person to work, and that they know now they have choices.
They do. And I want to underscore, this isn't just about knowledge workers. We're seeing a burgeoning of labor movements. If you look at some of the recent unionization efforts of, the Amazon warehouse in New York, or, Starbucks facilities. So people up and down the chain are really looking at, I'm not being seen. You corporate leadership may be very focused on your quarterly profits and how that's doing, but I'm not just a cog in the wheel, and I'm not willing to play that role anymore. So I think we're seeing some very powerful and painful for leadership signals that say, hey, let's really get back to this "I see you" question, and begin to make some moves for that.
When you talk about zero tolerance in these ways, I think all of us have been in meetings before where, the text of the meeting is pretty kind and respectful, but then the person who's not in the meeting gets trashed a little bit, or the meeting after the meeting, we have the "what do you really feel about these people" kinds of ideas. Does your zero tolerance apply to those quips, those meetings after the meeting, in terms of the way the team looks at each other?
Well, absolutely. And just for fun, let me just quickly tell you what those principles are, because it'll really get at to answer your question. So people first, love them up. Everyone's included. Compelling vision, comprehensive strategy, and relentless implementation. Clear performance goals. One plan using facts and data. Love what you think. Want to see what the data is you're looking at. Expect the unexpected. Expect to deal with it. Everyone knows the plan, the stat, and the areas of special attention. Propose a plan. Positive, find a way attitude. Respect, listen, help, and appreciate each other. Very complicated words, Gary. Emotional resilience, trust the process of working together. Have fun, enjoy each other and the journey, or the journey and each other. Now, the last one, to your point, is the corollary to that is never a joke, never humor at anybody's expense. And the reason is it detracts from working together, because it detracts from creating a safe environment. Because if anybody thinks they're going to be made fun of or a victim, then they're not going to operate with these principles and practices. So now you can imagine this is on the wall. See, I have a copy here for you. So it's on the wall. It's somewhere a tattoo on my arm, I'm sure. It's so important. And so it's on a card. Everybody has the card on their person. It's in every room. And so think about being in a business plan review and everybody's there. Now think about, and you're there every week looking at each other, and you're sharing your part, and you're sharing what's going well, the areas need special attention. Can you imagine violating these principles and practices in front of that entire team that's representing all the stakeholders? I mean, can you imagine that if you had a red item and you brought it up, and then next week you came back and then you say to the team, I was really busy, the hell with all of you. Can you imagine the conversation on the playground? I mean, what are you doing? Don't you want to help get this compelling vision done and blah, blah, blah? So the most important thing I do is I lead by example. And when I don't follow the principles, I make a mistake or whatever, or I forget, I just say I'm sorry. And of course, most corporations, you never heard the sorry word, let alone the love word. And so just say you're sorry, and grow and move and keep developing your individual and your team talent. Make sense?
Well, it makes perfect sense to me. And it seems like saying I'm sorry, or I changed my mind, or I love shouldn't be so difficult in some ways.
Exactly.
But, before we look a little more deeply at one thing, because there's a tendency, I think if there's one thing psychologists all agree about, that Lord Acton had it about right when he said that power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely, or tends to, even to as much as a third of people who get power eventually. You guys must have come across in your work with leaders, people who seek out power for power's sake. And have you had success in getting them to look in the mirror a little bit and see the power of humility as opposed to the power of power?
Well, Marilyn and I have seen this together because she's invited me to teach with her. And Marilyn's dedicated her whole life, not only to the MBA program as the way we think of them, which are the skills associated with business, whether profit or nonprofit, but also with who you are as a person. She actually, it's easier for me to say this than for her to say it. But one of the things that I thought was so neat, she actually added a semester in the MBA program in the front where they did a deep dive into who you are as a person with professional help. And then you go through the rest of the MBA program. And then at the end of the program, they had another semester where they individually or together will work on something that will serve the greater good. So you think about an MBA program, they're working on your skills, but they're also working on your character. And so it's amazing to me that if you have this environment and you have this culture, that it's been my experience, 90% of all the participants will move into the light, away from Grendel's mother and extended family down there in the marshes, because it's so fun, it's so neat, it's so satisfying, it's safe, and you're contributing in the greatest way. And so I think that environment, Marilyn said this earlier, the discipline on that environment, along with the behaviors, will absolutely be the biggest significant contributor to people further developing themselves as people and as leaders. Marilyn, what do you think?
I think you're so right. And it goes back to my comment earlier that I think there are about 70% of the people who can be moved toward the light, Alan, and who can learn this, because it's really a set of behaviors. And if we can help people understand what the important behaviors are, then they will deliver on that if they understand the results as well. But to Gary's point, does absolute power corrupt? And are there people who really just want the power? Unfortunately, yes. And I indicated that about 15% of the people, I think it's hard to get them to change or to even want to change. They may give lip service to it, but they won't do it. And for this reason, it's really critical for senior leaders and for boards to be very mindful of that issue and to not put people in positions of power who really are just power driven. You know, one of the people in the book, people I admire as a leader, is Jim Sinegal, co-founder, CEO for many, many years of Costco. And he says that 85–90% of management, of being a leader, is teaching. It's teaching others how to lead well. And he commented to me at one point, he said, you know, when we make an appointment into leadership, we want our culture to be jerk free. and it's hard to teach people skills. So if you put someone in a position and they're not doing well, you do everything you can to try to help them. You get them a coach, as Alan said, you counsel them, you give them 2 or 3 tries, but if they're not getting it, he said, we will move that person to a position where they can do less damage. And I just thought that was so powerful. And I would encourage senior leaders everywhere to really understand that. If you get a person who's in it just for power and who doesn't understand dignity and doesn't have the humility, you are damaging your organization and you're hurting your results. You'll never get the kind of results that Alan got because you're not really supporting the people who work for you in a way that makes them want to deliver that.
And the one thing that jumps off the page at me, both in Alan, the working together system, and the way that people related to each other within that system in your description, and Marilyn, in your book, I found myself asking myself, why can't we, one person at a time, find a way to have people believe that others are as good as they think they are? You know, most of the research is pretty interesting. They ask people, like, say, are you pretty good? Yeah, I'm pretty good. It's those other guys I'm worried about. And and the truth is, there's a lot of research that people say, well, I'm doing it for this, but those other guys. And, you know, in your work, I want to thank both of you for your work in this way, because I do think for each person who turns and sees dignity and sees the light differently, they release another person to do the same thing. And what a difference it would be in the world if, Marilyn, we picked up and we read the book and dedicated just a few more hours every day to seeing other people who they really are. So I want to thank you for that, because it made me think about it last week.
Thank you, Gary.
I have a couple questions before we go. What are you guys reading? I mean, people, what are you reading? What are you learning? Do you have something you're reading that you could share with everybody?
Sure. I got an advanced copy of Jim Weber's book, Running with Purpose. He's CEO of Brooks Running, which is wholly owned by Berkshire Hathaway, and really credited with, you know, they're sort of taking on a Goliath. They're not Nike. They're not one of the big athletic companies, but they have grown and done amazingly well with his strategy and his leadership, another humble leader. So I'm enjoying his book at this time.
Oh, that's great. Alan, are you reading anything interesting?
So Gary, I want to just go a little further past your question. I have 2. One I read regularly. It's this one. And the reason is that I recommend it to everybody, and everybody asks me about it, and it's just powerful. And the another one is Conscious Capitalism.
Capitalism, nice.
And John McKay was the CEO of Whole Foods. And what's really neat about this, Gary, is that the U.S. Business Roundtable really did a most phenomenal thing when they redefined the purpose of business to be not just about the shareholder, but it'd be about all the stakeholders, and all of them would benefit and the greater good from the business being successful. And that's what he believes. And also, that's what he has led, like a few of us, or a lot of us. And he also explains how to do it. So this is like another how-to your point. Most people write mostly about the who, but this is a really fantastic implementation by a leader that actually operated this way also. Conscious Capitalism.
Thanks, that's great.
And leader humility.
So if I asked you, we learn a lot to lead by looking at others and going, I want to be more like that person and less like that person. What 1 or 2 leaders in your lives most influenced your thinking, or you most admired? Marilyn?
So, you know, leaders come in all sectors. There's certainly corporate leaders, nonprofit leaders, and I think 2 of those I admire most happen to be judicial leaders. So Thurgood Marshall is a hero on a personal level. I'll date myself by saying I'm originally from Alabama. I grew up in a segregated South. I integrated what was a junior high school at the time, 7th to 8th grades, while the school was still segregated, and had some really rough experiences there. And then the Civil Rights Act passed. What Thurgood did, and I didn't realize this till I was about to defend my dissertation at University of Maryland, and I was thinking about how did I get here? And it occurred to me that he had applied to University of Maryland for law school, got rejected because he is Black, went to Howard, where I went to undergrad, to get his law degree, and then moved to the South to join the NAACP and fight school segregation. And because of that, he ultimately got the Brown versus Board of Ed case, took it all the way to the Supreme Court, blew the system wide open, which enabled me to integrate the school that I hated at the time, but preserved my own development, and later to matriculate to University of Maryland and earn a doctorate at a school that he couldn't get into. So just a powerful example to me of somebody who in a way was a victim, but refused to become a victim and fought for social justice, just stepped into a leadership role without being formally designated. And in a similar way, I would anoint Ruth Bader Ginsburg because as a female did much the same, shattered a glass ceiling and refused to be a victim in the process, and yet never lost that sensibility about human dignity as she worked with her judicial career. So those would be two of my heroes and heroines.
Would you like to know what I think?
Yes, sir. I sure would.
I want to know what you think, Al.
So I want to stick close to the humility book for this, because as Marilyn said, especially when you have a conversation like we're having, it leads you in a wonderful way to think about the leaders. So your question is like phenomenal, and having a book like Marilyn's is really facilitates you thinking about that. And one of the neat things that Marilyn did was she interviewed extensively 12 leaders. And these 12 leaders, Gary, are all leaders that lead with humility. And a neat thing she did is that usually you'll hear about the leader on what they've done, but you don't know how they developed and formed. And that's what's the neat thing about Marilyn's service at Yale University. She was the leader for the Center for Leader Formation and Development. And I remember asking her when the first time I met her, what does the word formation mean? Well, now we're talking about that. You know, what happened throughout your life to help develop you who you are, as well as development, the way we think of it scholastically and stuff. And so every one of them she interviewed, she had them share their story. So not only do you see what they are doing and who they are and how they do it, but you get a chance to be taken inside to how they became who they are and leading them with this humility. So I'd recommend those are 12 people that I would really study along with the rest of her points in her book.
And I would sneak in here, Gary, with a third leader I really admire, who's one of the 12, and that's my partner on this call, Alan Mulally, who is just a leader everyone admires. I mean, he's so well renowned for what he has done. But as I said, it goes back to that first 15 minutes of getting to know him and realizing it's who you are that has enabled you to do what you've done. It's just awesome.
Well, thank you, Marilyn. And I, of course, I feel the same way. And Gary, you didn't, when you asked the first question to Marilyn about how we got together, you didn't ask me. And I feel like I have a need to share with you what I think about how that happened. So everything Marilyn said is correct. And then later on, she told me that one of the things that she has to deal with as a famous leader of a great school, in a business school, it was all these business leaders that would retire and then come to see her with their fantastic things that they wanted to share. And she would listen patiently, and the vast majority of the time, there wasn't an opportunity for them. And so she told me this later, and I thought to myself, holy cow, she selected me. I made the cut with Marilyn. I made the cut to be able to work with her. And so everything about working with her has been not only a joy, but it's been just absolutely fantastic.
Thank you, Alan.
And I've enjoyed the book. I enjoyed meeting both of you. And if I were to look at our discussions today and beforehand, I think your three questions run in my mind, Marilyn, which are, if I use a we instead of us, if I said that, where are we going? I hope we're going in a place where we can convince more people in the world to look in the eyes of the people around them and see the potential of ordinary people to do extraordinary things. And I think that if we looked at people and we solved them in that way, that the world would be a hugely more positive, better place. And I congratulate you on your book, and I congratulate you on your work. Alan, I am still a raging fan of the system and all the stuff that you've done and the kind of example you've provided for the rest of us. And I want to thank you both for your time and for your work. I really appreciate you spending time with me this morning. And I'd also like to thank the Washington Speakers Bureau.
Yes.
And their continued commitment to facilitating conversations like this, where thought leaders can share their wisdom so that we can build a better world in the future. Thank you, guys.
Well said.
Thank you so much, Gary. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank everyone for listening. If you have comments, please send them to us. I really appreciate your time. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.